recently with Mr. Bernard today, and there are a lot of unknowns in many of this, much of this, in terms of exactly what will the details be for any of these programs. And for example, chorus and band, how will that be scheduled in the elementary school and the middle school? Will we put it back exactly the way that it was, or will we do something that is either before school or after school? I think those kinds of questions are going to occupy a lot of the thinking as we go forward in the spring.
I guess the question, I had the same question. If we get the override passed and they hire that PE teacher, at what point will the kids be allowed to then, because we're not taking the stress off the electives by not, in other words, last year the kids signed up for PE, and then over the summer it was a mad scramble, basically telling those kids, you don't have PE, you gotta pick something else, correct? But if they don't sign up now and we get the PE, how are we going to get them signed up and not end up with electives that end up with 5 kids because everybody then leaves an elective and goes to PE? I know you. I think it's important that
there's got to be a way to survey them now, because things aren't due until the end of the week. Survey them now. How many of those juniors and seniors would opt for that elective? Because right now they're choosing a different one that they might get assigned to.
Right.
Wouldn't it make more sense to survey them on May 7th?
Well, if you want to hold off course selection until then.
They don't have to hold off course selection. They can make changes in there.
Can they make changes after? I mean, how easy is it to make changes after there? I mean, I know it's not an easy situation here, but how easy is it if we get that PE teacher for the kids then to say, okay, now can I take that PE course?
I think the way that I would answer that is that we know right now under the available funds budget that we have a certain amount of money, and we're going to try to use that to put some programs back in place. Where it says restoring, for example, at priority 2, the fine arts, it may not, I just need to caution everyone, it may not be restored exactly the way that it was done in the past. So it's hard to say right now exactly.
But this is different because you might restore band and chorus in a different way. But this PE course, it's not there at all. So I know we want to have flexibility to bring back programs in a different form, but how would this one be brought back? And I'm not hearing that it's going to come back, and that's unsettling to me. I don't care how the principal decides to register the kids before or after May 8th. I just think we need to be clear. We expect it, if the override passes, to be offered to the kids, PE as an elective. If it's a different form, if it's just seniors or it has a health component, then that's coming back in a different form. But I'm not hearing that it's going to come back. And that's unsettling as a parent. I think it would be unsettling to 150 students, but we also spelt it out on that pyramid chart. So we can't back off from it now. So.
Well, again, I think there are a number of things on this pyramid that where it says restoring, for example, at level 2, the fine arts, PE, how that's scheduled and how frequently that occurs may not be exactly the way it was before. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that even at the high school, the way in which some of these programs will be moving people around, we're not sure yet who is going to be teaching what. And to set up very definite expectations when there are still questions, I think, could be problematic.
But I think if we get that money, David, that was a huge concern of mine, the overcrowding of electives. And if we get that override, I think we have to restore that PE teacher. Right. Because I think we promised that. Right. We promised that those electives wouldn't have 30 and plus kids. And I don't see how if we get that money, I don't see how we can't put that PE program back.
Well, again, I'm not trying to be defensive here. What I'm saying is that based on the money that we have at priority 1 and 2, which is the first step in what we're trying to deal with, priority 1 was to deal with putting back in some additional teachers in certain core areas.
Right.
And it appears at the moment that that would be addressed targeting, not just class size, but trying to balance out the number of additional courses that students should be able to have access to.
I understand that, and again, I understand the need to have flexibility. But what I don't understand is not putting in place a procedure for kids to choose an elective should the override pass. And if the intention is not to put it back, then we need to know now. There has to be a mechanism for them to sign up after.
Well, there are always, again, with changes, and if there are changes that are going to happen in the future, and I think some of that can be anticipated now, and others, I think it would be premature to put that out to students when in fact we don't have all of the information. We don't have all of the information. I know right up front, even with priority 1 and 2, that we're able to put everything back the way it was taken out last year.
So should we not be promoting priority 3 as restoring the PE elective to the high school?
I think priority 3 should be promoted as $188,485, and will hire the equivalent of 5 full-time staff. Exactly how that's going to be targeted, there's a whole long list there. You look at it, it says it restores libraries, restores computers. We're not going to be able to restore all of the positions. So even, for example, here at the middle school, if the override passes, we may not be able to hire back a middle school librarian. We may have to combine that with some other kind of position.
I just think that's really varying from what we have even brought to town meeting.
I was under the distinct impression that if the override passed, that PE teacher and that elective would be back at the school, and I believe we discussed it at several meetings.
The documentation we were given said that 3 teachers in priority 1 and 1 in priority 3, and that they cover the 4 academic disciplines.
In priority 3 specifically said a PE teacher
Right.
at the high school, specifically, and
Specifically
I
says that.
questioned back then why we were locking us in, and I cautioned that once outside groups took on the charge of running an override, they would specifically list these. I made that clear, and we were fine. And now, things, I don't know, it's unsettling. I'm gonna go on record as saying that I am supporting priority 3 and the restoration of the PE as an elective program. And if it takes on a different shape, so be it. If we can only offer it to seniors, or we cap the participation, or we make it a health PE class, I understand that. Just like I understand band and chorus might be a user fee program after school. I understand that our funds have to carry us for multiple years because we can't request an override every year. But PE as an elective should come back in some form to the high school if priority 3 passes.
Well, it does say that here, but again, my caution is that if the override passes, I still think there are going to be a number of questions that will have to be addressed in terms of how we're going to actually end up staffing the school. And some of those questions will not be answered until after the override, and certainly as we get into June and beyond. So I can't say tonight that it's exactly going to be in this form. We can see on the list in priority 3 that a PE high school teacher is going to be hired. However, there may be also additional needs that come up that I'm going to have to come back to the committee and say, here's where we are. If the committee at that point says, no matter what, we're going to hire a physical education teacher at the expense of something else that still hasn't surfaced at this point, then that would be the committee's decision.
All right, then along those lines, we really should have a mechanism in place for the kids that want to let it be known that that's an elective choice.
not officially choosing a course, but
They have to choose A, and my son would like one of his electives to be PE, and there's nowhere on there for him to select it, because the program of studies, rightfully so, was put together early. It doesn't have it.
but we can't list it as a course yet because we don't
Right.
have the money.
Right.
So we can't officially have the kids signing up for a course.
They can draw option number 9, PE.
I guess I would, I understand what you're saying, David. I just think we did, you know, we made that commitment, and I know there other things could come up, and I guess the committee's gonna have to make, you know, we'll make the decision as we move along and when we figure out the override, but, you know, I know I had a huge concern with the class sizes and the electives, and I think we need to do whatever we can to follow through on that. Any other comments? Steve? No?
I think until we know whether the override is approved, I think it's very hard to pin these things down. And I think there may be things that are not possible without the override that we don't, that haven't been identified yet.
Correct.
So I think it's dangerous until people have had a chance to really put a full plan together to talk too much about it.
I guess though, then we shouldn't have put a pyramid together that listed that position as being added if the override passes. That we have that in public.
That's assuming it passes.
Right.
The question is what happens if it doesn't? And there are very serious issues there because it doesn't cover the full second stage of the pyramid.
Correct.
So you have to make some choices. And it may even be that the choices would actually, when you actually consider the practicalities of the choices, you might find yourself with a little piece of money left to dip into the third priority because it's not enough to do something sensible in the second. And you can't say that until the plans were put together.
Any other comments? I'll go on record with Mrs. Vaca saying, I strongly support that PE position. I mean, I think we have to add that unless there are unforeseen circumstances if the override passes. And I guess that it'll be up to John to develop a plan if we do get the override, how we're gonna get those kids in those courses. Mr. Bowers, you want to make a quick comment?
Yes, I believe that you have sold the Phase 3, Priority 3 to the town in a certain way. Mrs. Vaca is right on. And if you don't do that, you not only won't get this override, you won't get any other override ever.
Yes, but
Because
Mrs.
you're violating what the people have been sold and what they've been programmed for.
This committee, especially Mrs. Vaca, especially at the budget forum, cautioned the voters not to try to nail us down to particular positions because of what happens over the summer, because of, the course choices that the seniors make, because of, sped students moving in, we might have to move some money over to somewhere else, but it was demanded from us over and over to tell us what you're gonna use the money for. And we gave them what we felt were the most likely
With all due
things.
respect, I'm one of those people out there. I'm not over there yet. I will be soon.
Yeah.
About right after the vote is made. So we'll know about that. But I can tell you what I've heard, and what I've heard and what I've been sold on is that when we get 3 in the override, that we get all of these things as Mrs. Vaca said.
And I agree. I think barring unforeseen circumstances, I think that's what we should do, and we as a committee will decide that. I mean, if there are no unforeseen circumstances, then we should be putting into place, people asked if we didn't want to put out that pyramid, we shouldn't have put it out. That's my opinion, that's all.
Mel, assuming the override passes, at that point in time, the courses are established, then I'm sure there's gonna be a mechanism in place for people to sign
Right.
up on. So why are we spending an hour on it now, if in fact,
Because we're